lived according to the words of Colossians 3, I reckon I'd be out of a job. I don't believe there would be need for many counselling or psychology work. In fact, I don't believe that doctors' waiting rooms would be nearly as full, as our mental well-being and our physical well-being would be greatly improved. Solicitors, lawyers wouldn't have the same disputes in court. Family divorce, mediation, workplace harassment, whole different story. I believe Tom Smith's work as a policeman would probably be more about traffic control and little old ladies finding their way home. Last week, Adrian spoke on Colossians 3, 1-5, and I'm sure he would have mentioned Paul's first list. Where do I poke this? Is there somewhere? Oh, I have to turn it on, don't I? Here we go. Sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires and greed. And I think many can feel quite saintly with this list and maybe even a little bit smug. Perhaps there's not even a hint of sexual temptation, particularly if your testosterone levels have dwindled or arthritis has set in, or if your androgen levels are producing more facial hair than sexual desire. It's really not an issue, is it? Premarital sex, adultery, homosexuality, pornography. If this is not on my radar, I can feel quite acceptable to God. So just when I'm beginning to feel that, God and me have it all together, Paul springs up the second list, and this list goes a layer deeper. But now you must put away anger, wrath, malice, slander, and filthy talk from your mouth, and do not lie to one another. Paul talks about people that lose it. Those who outwardly blow up in anger, and those who seethe underneath and practice a passive-aggressive type of anger. It's almost like sugar-coated wasabi, or maybe a toffee jalapeno. It's really sweet on the outside, but underneath it's like a boiling cauldron of rage. Colossians also addresses those who insult or smear someone's name and reputation, slanderous, defamatory comments. And nowadays you don't even need to have a name or a face. All you just need is a hashtag, an emoji, and an @.com address. Then there are those that put everyone on edge. The nasty, the mean, the cruel, the irritable, the grumpy, the moody, the negative people who seem to enjoy everyone walking on eggshells around them. Nothing seems to please, and life is just miserable for everyone. Filthy talk is also on this list, and maybe surprisingly that it's not on the same list as in verse 5 with all the other sexual sins, but probably because filthy talk includes so much more. Vromikos, the Greek word for filthy talk, and even the name vromikos sounds like something you just want to spew out of your mouth. It refers to grubby, potty-mouth language, but also talk that demeans, that violates respect, talk that abuses and deflates somebody's self-worth. Lying is there as well. Betraying trust, lying for our own gain, lying so we can progress or move up the ladder a bit more quickly, pretending we are someone we are not, pretending that we've done something we haven't, twisting the truth, or lying to avoid consequences. Did Paul really know what our homes and workplaces and communities and schools and universities were going to be like in the 21st century? Current Australian workplace research shows that 1 in 2 working people have been exposed to workplace harassment as a victim or a bystander. Employees are sworn and yelled at. Employees are humiliated in front of others. They're threatened. They're targeted by racist and gender comments. In 2001, Australia had the 6th highest rate of workplace bullying compared to the European countries. Australia's current rate of bullying now exceeds the rates measured in the European countries. And homes are no better. In Australia, 1 in 6 women experience abuse before the age of 15. Police deal with a new case of domestic violence every 2 minutes, and they're just the ones that are reported. So surely the church is immune. Well, maybe not. Step inside a board meeting, church planning meeting, or outside in the car park after the meeting, and maybe the saints aren't quite so saintly. And many put on that church face each Sabbath. We smile, we shake hands, we give hugs, we play the perfect Christian role. But behind closed doors, our speech, our actions, our thoughts, maybe they're completely different. And you know what? We pay a huge price for the fallout. A whole range of psychological health issues because of how we treat others. Anxiety and depression, post-traumatic stress, psychosomatic symptoms, burnout and other health consequences. This can also lead to self-harm, substance abuse and suicides. Failing to live by Colossians 3 is pretty much the backbone behind all marriage and relationship breakdowns, parent and child conflicts, church conflicts and members leaving, employment rifts. Colossians 3 isn't written to keep God happy. Colossians 3 is perfect, sound wisdom and counsel to keep us as humans in a state of well-being. So for the rest of the sermon, we can beat around the bush and we can pretend that this doesn't apply to us. And I can actually rationalise my intentions. I really didn't mean that, especially when I add to my gossip or my slanderous comment, we really should pray for her. I can sit and tell myself I'm not like that. My angry words and the words that I use, they don't really hurt anyone. They just kick my kids or my spouse into action. I can justify what I say, how I act, what I do, how I make others feel, because there's always a reason, isn't there? Or I can stop and think and evaluate and be honest and say, you know what, this could actually apply to me. Professor Paul Gilbert writes about human behaviours. He said, we're not just a genetic system, 2 arms, 2 legs and a head. We are more. We are emotions, a knowing awareness to improve ourselves. We are created with reason and imagination and anticipation of the future. And we have powerful motivational systems to survive. Now, some of these motivational systems cause us to survive at any cost. The fight, flight or flee system is absolutely brilliant to keep us safe and alive. But sometimes it goes beyond that. The survive at any cost can quickly turn to making others pay. Humans are one of the few creators, in fact, the only created creature, that actually deliberately hurt each other. You might say, we see this in the animal kingdom. The fight for survival, fight and hunt for food. But it is more than a leopard or a bear or a lion hunting and killing for food. Because human motivation leads us to want power. Being one up. We are so highly competitive. We strive for the best jobs, positions, the best salaries, the best homes, neighbourhoods, the best front yards even, the best holidays, the best education. In fact, we are so focused on ourselves and getting the best, looking the best, having the best, our competitive spirit leads to the behaviours Paul talks about in Colossians 3. Anger. When I don't get or can't be what I want. Slander. If I feel threatened, someone is more skilled than me, someone's more talented, more beautiful, more muscular, more wealthy. We gossip, we lie, we isolate, and we marginalise to be one up and be the best. And then we bribe and yell and threaten our kids and our partners in an attempt to make them the best. Have you ever been the recipient of these behaviours? If you have, you'll know that being the target of anger, gossip and slander, harassment, causes a huge upheaval in our nervous systems. It doesn't feel good. The heart races. We can't eat. We can't sleep. We are physically unwell and we can't get that thing that was said or done to us out of our heads, even sometimes 20 or 30 years later. So we adopt behaviours of protection, withdrawal behaviours. We put walls up. We avoid each other. We stop communicating and interacting. Families don't want to meet up anymore. Friendships dissolve. These are all behaviours that isolate. But you know, we are not created to isolate. We were actually created to connect. This has huge implications for our children and young people, and we're going to talk kids just for a moment. A child's brain is fully formed, but it's not fully functioning. The part that's functioning really well is the limbic system, the emotional brain. It's fully active right from birth. But a child doesn't have a fully functioning prefrontal cortex. This means they can't reason or analyse or work through why people get angry, why people say mean and do mean things. They just live in fear. Heart pounding, upset tummy, fast breathing, excess overload of cortisol and adrenaline. The effects of parental fighting. Living in a home of anger, slander, meanness, huge detrimental effects on children's brain development. Certain receptors that are found in the hippocampus that are needed to down-regulate stress are simply not developed. So we get kids with a heightened sensitivity. They can't handle change or anything new. Their brain is always scanning for danger, so they've become very, very hypervigilant. Learning is difficult, so they find school really, really tough. They don't mix with their peers well. They find it hard to make and keep friends, and they are commonly bullies or they are the target of bullies. Children will always display their emotions behaviourally. They don't have the words, they don't have the reasoning ability. If life is bad, sad or scary, a child will behave in any way in an attempt to feel safe. Tantrums, anger outbursts, attention-seeking behaviours, or they just withdraw. And their phone becomes their best friend. Childhood experiences establish the trajectories of how a person will be able to handle stress and life's changes when they are adults. Colossians 3 is about protecting our kids. It's about protecting each other. And it's also about protecting ourselves. Because there is also a huge effect on the brain of the one who gets angry. While the angry person may think they feel better after that attack they have on someone, studies show that the angry person's brain is also in a very hyper-aroused state. Being angry causes a rise in cortisol. Too much cortisol causes neurons to accept too much calcium into the membranes. Too much calcium causes cells to fire too frequently and too quickly, and cells die. It's called apoptosis. When we have a deficiency in cells and neurons, particularly in that prefrontal cortex area, we can't make good decisions, we can't think clearly, we can't make good judgment calls, we can't plan for the future effectively. Anger makes us a fool. Proverbs 29:11. A fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man keeps himself under control. Anger causes a reduction in serotonin levels. Now, serotonin is known as the happy neurotransmitter. Not enough, and we will feel anxiety and frustration and pain a whole lot more easily, commonly leading to depressive states. So what do? We go along to our happy GP who will prescribe a selective serotonin reuptake indicator, an SSRI, commonly known as an antidepressant. We are happy to take a pill to make ourselves happy again. Anger heightens blood pressure, glucose levels and fatty acid levels, all precursors to heart disease and stroke. Living like this is not God's plan for us. So why do we do it? Because anger momentarily makes us feel better. But someone say, but it doesn't. I don't enjoy getting angry. But it does. And you do. And that's why you continue to get angry, or being mean, or gossiping, or slandering, or being irritable. No behaviour is ever repeated unless there is a reward in some way. If there is no reward, we don't do it. And that reward is dopamine. Dopamine is the motivating hormone. Dopamine is behind every repeated behaviour, every addiction, every habit, every routine or practice we engage in, every passion, every impulse. Every time we get angry and it gets us what we want, dopamine's released. Every time we slander and it makes us feel just a little bit superior, another hit of dopamine. Every time we lie and we get away with it or get what we want, dopamine. Every time we are irritable and people run around for us, dopamine. Every time our behaviours make us feel even slightly better, dopamine is released to make us want to repeat the anger, the slander, the lies, the gossip again and again and again. And every time we repeat the behaviour, the neural wiring becomes denser and more permanent. It's called the Hebbian principle. Neurons that fire together, wire together. This is the fundamental principle behind neuroplasticity by Donald Hebb. This is the changing brain. Do a behaviour enough, and the brain pattern develops and gets stronger the more we use it. So then many say, you know what, I've got a good excuse. I can't help it if I get angry. It's in my genes. It's true. There is a genetic predisposition. There is a gene that predisposes us to being angry and aggressive. The neuroscience tells us that genetic traits are passed down up to 4 generations. Isn't it fascinating that Exodus 3:7 says that the sins of the fathers are passed down onto the children under the third and fourth generations? But not all genetic predispositions need to show. There's some research that's been done with rat pups from rat mothers who had a genetic predisposition to being angry and aggressive. Rat mothers that don't nurture their babies well, they don't lick, they don't stroke, they don't care for them well. When they had babies, sure enough, their babies were also aggressive, angry young babies. The experimenters then took the babies away from the angry, aggressive, non-nurturing mothers, their next litter, and put them with mothers that were caring and nurturing and stroking and licking. These babies never displayed the genetic predisposition of aggressiveness and anger. We may have a genetic predisposition, but it is our environment that activates it. It's called epigenetics, beyond the genes. You know what? We're born into a sinful world, sinful families. We are genetically programmed to respond to our sinful environment in very sinful ways. But there is great news. Jesus Christ invites us to be born again. Not physically, but spiritually. Come, says Jesus, live beyond the genes. Come and be a new creature. Come live in my environment of love and support and protection and care and nurture and safety. Come connect with me. It's actually what he died for. Living in Jesus' environment, connecting with him, develops new patterns of behaviour, new ways of thinking, new habits, new views, new ways of speaking to each other, new thoughts, new perspectives on people and how we treat them, new brain pathways. Does it mean we will act perfectly? Absolutely not. Not this side of heaven. But our perspectives change. And changed perspectives start to change behaviours. Spiritual neuroplasticity. Now, we can't stop people offending us and things not going as planned. But being born again into a Jesus environment, we choose to change perspective and our reaction to how bad stuff affects us. Living in a Jesus environment creates in us a desire to trust instead of tantrum, to salute instead of slander, to be honest instead of devious, to support rather than sabotage and gossip. Being born again is breaking the sinful genetic predisposition of this world. I spoke about the Hebbian principle. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Well, there's also something called the Mersenne principle. Neurons that fire apart, wire apart, meaning if you don't use the pathway, it gradually loses its impact. Paul says, that old stuff you used to do, that's not your true lineage. That's your old BC life. That's the behaviour patterns that you adopted before you knew Christ. By the grace of Christ, you are a new creation. So strip off your old sinful ways and all its wicked deeds. Burn the filthy clothes you once wore, and your mother and your father wore, and your grandfather and grandmother wore, your great-grandparents wore, all that genetic stuff. Strip it off, be born again, and allow God's nurture and love to change. One short story to finish. Back in the mid-1980s, the Ferry boys in Mildura owned and operated a septic tank pumping business. A smelly business that not too many people rush to get into, but it provides a very necessary service to those not connected to the town sewerage system. So the Ferrys bought a truck. It wasn't this truck, but similar. It was a white truck with a large green tank on the back and a long, long blue hose with the diameter the size of a fire hose. So Ray, husband Ray, got the Sunday shift. He would work all week plumbing, and then on the weekend he would go around and pump all the septic tanks and the grease tracks and then help them out. Smelly as it was, I actually used to go with him because young, small 2-year-old Joshua would just love being in the truck with his dad. So one particular Sunday, Ray had spent all morning pumping out grease traps and septic tanks. The tank on the back was full, so we had to drive out to the sewage farm where we would dump this sewage into the pits at the sewage farm. Now, we were in a hurry. It had been a long morning and I was pregnant with Cameron. So I wasn't feeling particularly great, so Ray was in a bit of a hurry. So he decided that he would stop by the main office block where there was a trap in the roadway, instead of going another 300 metres and unlocking the gate and going through the gate and way out to the other pits out the back. So while Ray is setting up and getting ready, I said to Josh, let's go for a walk. So I took 2-year-old Josh with me and we walked down the road. After about 10, 15 minutes, I thought, surely Ray's finished by now and I'd really want to get home. Turn back, and what I saw was hilarious but horrible. It was entertaining but horrendous all at the same time. That long, long blue hose, the diameter of a fire hose, was whipping around uncontrollably, snaking in and out, heaving up and down, arcing, thrashing about, all the time spewing filthy sewage over the white office block, the trees, the gardens, the pathway, the road, and Ray. Everything was covered, top to toe. Filthy sewage. And Ray needed some serious help. Out of every pore and almost every orifice, ears, eyes, mouth, nostrils, this stuff dripped. His clothes were soaked and his hair was dripping. He was a disgusting, polluted mess. Putrid, offensive, isolating. I didn't want to go anywhere near him. Muck inhibits. It repulses. It sickens. So does anger. So does malice. So does lies. So does slander. Our filth turns people away. It breaks relationships. It offends. It inhibits freedom. It inhibits our potential. It violates a child's safety and has a negative impact on their brain development. Muck fills our eyes, and how I look and perceive everything and everyone in the world is different. And Paul says, enough. You don't have to live like this. You don't have to wear any of these filthy clothes anymore. Strip off the old, burn them, just as we did with Ray. Verse 10, now you're dressed in a new wardrobe. Every item of your new way of life is custom made by the Creator with His label on it. Take off the filth, get washed, and get into something clean. Richard Rohr states, "What you see is what you get. What you seek is what you get." What are you seeking? Philippians 4:8 says, "Seek whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right and pure and lovely, whatever is admirable. Seek and think on these things." It's not renewing inside ourselves so we can become critical and judgmental of others. It's not about that. True renewing and mending brings compassion and empathy and understanding and love. Verse 12. "So chosen by God for this new life of love, dress in the wardrobe God picked out for you. Compassion, kindness, humility, love. Do new, clean, unsoiled clothes feel better than those filthy rags?" You'll have to ask Ray. He's sitting over there.